carefully. Chinese are ruling the Chinese land. Japan is ruled by Japanese. England is governed by Englishmen. America is governed by Americans. So, Africa must be ruled by Africans. Oh, I want to know the land. We must rule from Cape to Cairo. We must rule our promised land.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. We want to know who owns the land. That question resonates to every Ambazonian, Southern Cameroonian out there who keeps asking the question since 2016. They want to know who owns the former British Southern Cameroons. Is it La République du Cameroon, or the British or the former British Southern Cameroonians, today known as Ambazonians? And that will always be until that question is settled. Good evening. Welcome to News Talk here on ABS. I'm quite excited to be with you tonight. We're going to be talking about a number of things here beside the very special interview that I bring to you today, which I believe should be very, very eye-opening and inspiring. I'm going to be taking you to Mbengui, where the Colonial Divisional Officer for Mbengui has essentially held the traders to ransom. And also an exploit yesterday of the restoration fighters in Ngo-Ketunjia, bringing down quite a number of French Cameroon soldiers in that neck of the wood. Please, as you join, I'd like you to go ahead, hit your share button. Let us get the numbers, especially if you are watching by way of the social media. Let's get the numbers jumping. Again, let us get the numbers jumping. I will be right back in less than 1 minute. Don't touch your remote. God bless. Once more, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for tuning in to the broadcast tonight. We're here in Texas. It is a few minutes after 2 p.m. On ground zero, where we call Ambazonia, all of West Central and Western Europe, it should be a little after 8 p.m. In California, it should be about midday, around that. Thanks again for tuning in. I am your host, Chris Aino. Quite a pleasure to come to you with what is happening around the globe and in Ambazonia in particular. I won't waste your time as I bring you my guest for tonight, but before I do so, I'd like to bring you a little monologue that I have prior to this interview, which I believe again is going to be very, very illuminating. And we are here talking about the Eritrean referendum experience vis-a-vis that of the Southern Cameroons. What can Southern Cameroonians learn from Eritrea? What can they learn? The similarities in Eritrea and Southern Cameroon history, and why? We'll get inspired by them. Eritrea, like the Southern Cameroons, was made an autonomous province of Ethiopia after World War II. And just like in the case of the Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, the United Nations had decided to federate Eritrea with Ethiopia. Up until then, Eritrea was an Italian colony. But because of Italy's defeat in World War II, Eritrea was ceded to the temporal administration of the British military. In 1950, the United Nations passed a resolution that established Eritrea as a federated state with Ethiopia, under the condition that Eritrea would have its own parliament, its own flag, and its own administration. Exactly the same picture we were made to adopt in 1961 with the Republic of Cameroon. However, the Ethiopian Federation, like in ours, was short-lived. In 1962, Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie, doing exactly the same thing that Ahmadu Ahidjo did to the southern Cameroons, dissolved Eritrea's autonomous status, then annexed Eritrea and made it a province of Ethiopia. Ethiopia justified the annexation of Eritrea by arguing that Eritrea was historically part of Ethiopia, and that the federation arrangement wasn't working, they said. Again, you look back into our own case, our own history, you see the same narrative, isn't it? There is a word that is always fraudulently used in our case to make us believe that the southern Cameroon was always part of Cameroon. And the word that you hear all the time is reunification. So like in Ethiopia, you will recall that one of the reasons La République du Cameroun cancelled the autonomy we had was because they wanted to reunify Cameroon. However, the Eritreans didn't take it kindly. The annexation was deeply unpopular among Eritreans. They felt that their independence had been taken away from them, and it led to a long period of armed struggle for independence. In our case, that's where we are today. The Eritrean struggle for independence was led by several political and armed groups, including the Eritrean Liberation Front, ELF, and the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, EPLF. The EPLF eventually emerged as the dominant force, and it succeeded in winning Eritrea's independence in 1991 after 30 years long armed struggle against Ethiopian rule. The Eritrean Peace Agreement and the referendum were negotiated between the Eritrean government. I understand it was a provisional government led by President Isaiah Afwerki, and the Ethiopian government led by Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, with the assistance of international mediators. But before this happened, prior to the peace agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia, Eritrea had been involved in a long-standing border dispute with Ethiopia, which escalated again into another full-scale war between 1998 and 2000. After the war, the international community stepped in to help negotiate a peace agreement between the two countries. The peace process was facilitated by the Organization of African Unity, then called the OAU, today known as the AU, and included the participation of the United Nations, the United States, and other international organizations. The peace negotiations were complex and involved multiple rounds of talks and consultations between the two sides. The Eritrean government was represented by a delegation led by President Isaias Aweki, why the Ethiopian government was again represented by a delegation led by Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. Eventually, the negotiations resulted in the signing of the arduous Algeria Peace Agreement in 2000. The peace agreement included provisions for a referendum on Eritrea's independence. The referendum was held in April 1993, and the vast majority of the population, the people of Eritrea, voted in favor of independence. Eritrea officially declared independence, again officially declared independence on May 24, 1993. What can the people of the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia glean from the Eritrean experience? I am joined by someone who didn't only live that experience but fought for it too. Awed Siyehi is head of diplomacy department of the Eritrean organization called Global Yaki Eritrean Movement. Global Eritrean Movement is a worldwide umbrella association of the 11 national member organizations. It is an Eritrean socio-political movement that advocates for human rights, for justice, democracy, freedom of expression, and the rule of law in Eritrea. He lives here in the USA, and he is actually joining me from the state of Oklahoma. Thank you, Mr. Awed, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Somehow I can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Perfect. All right. Thanks for having you here, sir.
You are very welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the warm welcome. I look forward to our discussion in the next hour or so. And I think this is what we Africans have been missing, and unity, and being able to go ahead and share experience with the end goal being giving our people a better life.
Wonderful. I'm glad to have you, and let's see how your story can be inspiring to our own story. Let me start with this quote which I came across here regarding your referendum experience. It goes, one memorable account of Eritrea's electoral process by an international observer vividly describes how, and I quote, during the polling, there was euphoria, more religious it appeared than political. The polling stations were attended, we attended, were decorated with lights, streamers, woven rugs, and flowers. One American observer claimed that the palms people waved were spread in his path as they entered the polling area. Popcorn was thrown and people clapped while the women went into a rhythmic dance. The high shrill, ululating cheer of the women met us, they said. They met us the moment we were sighted approaching for the inspection tour. Now, again, this is one of the observers who monitored your referendum election. He said the observer goes on to describe how, after voting overwhelmingly for independence, people danced in the streets of Asmara and other towns with flags flying and flowers waving. They were all smiles and welcomed us observers with applause and the traditional ululating shrill greeting of the women in this part of Africa. My question to you, Awed, is how was it like for you to finally be free after 30 years of war. How was it like?
Well, it's unbelievable to say the least. Like you said it earlier, Eritrea was under colonization from Italy from about 1890 to 1941, followed by 10 years of British. And then in 1950, the UN passed a resolution federated Eritrea into Ethiopia. And then, of course, in 1961, the Eritrean people picked up an arm for our independence, for our struggle. And then that lasted for about 30 years. And then, of course, that was not free. We paid 65,000 lives for our freedom, for our independence. And that was in 1991. And like you stated, in 1993, a referendum took place. And overwhelmingly, the Eritrean people voted 99.8%, obviously, for our independence. But every family member, including myself, because of our size, we are about 3.5 million people. That is not a statistic or a number that is disclosed publicly by the government. But according to past numbers, we number about 3.5 million people. And there is not a single family that's not affected by the war, 30-year war. And you could only imagine being able to go ahead and fulfill your dream after 30 years. People just wept. People couldn't believe it. But the excitement was unreal. It was quite joy.
So where were you then? Were you on the ground when this happened?
Well, I was I was young. Then actually I was in Ethiopia in Addis Ababa, and on my way to United States. So when I found out that Eritrea was free, just being able to go ahead and spend that time with our community here in Texas. Like I said, it was just unreal. People were just out of their houses and celebrating with joys, and of course tuning into television of the news, and it was an exciting, a very historical time.
Wonderful. Let me get to this other quotation that I see here. And it says, on May 29, 1991, Isaiah Aweke, that is your president, called upon the United Nations to, and I quote, shoulder its moral responsibility to help conduct a free and fair referendum on Eritrean self-determination without further delay. In April 1992, the PGE, I guess that is talking about the provisional government, I believe, set up a referendum commission, and it also passed the Eritrean Nationality Proclamation, which set the criteria of citizenship as a prerequisite for participation in the referendum. A computerized registration of voters was also organized. Now, it is interesting to me. Eritrea had already declared independence, not recognized, not even by Ethiopia, that he had just beaten. But you went on to call for a referendum. If you may give us an understanding of what your president was thinking when, after winning the war, beating Ethiopia, they didn't just say, you know what, we are a country. They called for a referendum. What were they thinking?
Well, at that time, dictator Isaias Afewerki, before he became an audience of one, obviously was proactively working with the international community. Obviously, when you have such case, you need the support of the international community. First and foremost, need permission or understanding from the original host state, in our case, which was Ethiopia. In addition to that, you have the world powers that have their own interest. So you gotta put that into consideration as well. And the international community played a significant role in terms of our independence. Of course, the stakeholders are the Eritrean people. The Eritrean diaspora played a huge role, whether it is obviously utilizing their expertise or financial support. But mostly the Eritrean people inside Eritrea, they were thirsty for such results, and they were able to go ahead and mobilize and get to the destination of winning an independent country of Eritrea.
That is very interesting. So I guess essentially he was thinking if we do not call for a referendum, we may never be recognized. Your case may turn out to be the case of Somaliland.
Uh, Indeed, I mean, as you continue to fight for justice for your people, the owner of this is obviously your people. You have to start, and then of course the international community with your connections and being able to go ahead work with that. You got to navigate that as well. But at the end of the day, when everything is done and done, the honor or the ownership of your own destiny is you.
If I get you right, you are saying we have to start appealing to the international community. We have to do it. We have to take the responsibility to do that.
Well, I'm no, expert on such subject matter, but nevertheless, the experience of Eritrea, like you said, what Isaias Afwerki did back then, followed being to get the host state to relinquish. In addition to that, you got to get the United Nations to recognize your needs or your
Correct.
request. In our case, for example, the United Nations sent representatives to Eritrea to get it certified. And if I'm not mistaken, about 1,014 polling
I'm
stations
sorry. Are
were.
you saying you already, after you declared independence, before the referendum, you already had a United Nations representative on the ground in Eritrea?
Yeah, like I said, there was about 114 polling stations throughout Eritrea and about 100 UN observers throughout the country to get it certified.
Okay. So I'd like you to tell us what was the referendum process? I mean, the registration and every aspect of it that you can imagine. How did it happen? Let me read actually a statement that I found here in regards to that process, and that statement says. Uh, that statement says the the Eritrean struggle for independence was led by several political. No, that's not what I want. I, that statement. It says. Oh, I think I missed that statement. But essentially, that statement which I read essentially says that not only in Eritrea did voting take place, in Europe, in Canada, all over the diaspora, and even in Ethiopia, elections took place. The referendum election took place there. I am dying to know the process, the registration process, the voting process that made it to turn out the way it was, to the extent that the vote was 99.9% yes for a free and independent Eritrea. How was the process?
Well, the process itself is very detailed. In fact, I know some people that were part of the process, and I'll be more than happy to go ahead and connect you. But just in the nutshell itself, the 30 years war and previous to the 30 years war itself, a lot of Eritreans looking for opportunities, and then of course running away from the war. Now there were just a lot of refugees, whether it was in Sudan or Europe or Ethiopia, so on and so forth. For example, in Ethiopia alone, if I'm not mistaken, about 57,000 voters were total registered, and then of course they were able to go ahead and voice their willingness or their desire to see independent Eritrea. So the mobilization aspect of it obviously is at that moment the Eritrean administration did a great job of mobilizing resources to make sure that all votes were counted. And an example of that is, like I said, about 57,000 votes that took place inside Ethiopia.
So as far as registration was concerned, who was registering voters in all of these countries, including Ethiopia? Because, like in our case, people will tell you, hey, if you conduct a referendum in Ambazonia and involve French Cameroon, the elections are going to be rigged. But in your case, you actually had polling stations inside Ethiopia for Eritreans to vote there, and it appears that there was no rigging. So how was this process streamlined?
Well, for such a process to work, obviously an institution has to be established, and that institution was a commission was established by the government of Eritrea, and that commission was able to go ahead and follow the process. Whether you're a refugee in Sudan, in Ethiopia, or in Europe, most of these individual Eritreans have taken actually in the struggle. So it was definitely within their rights, and to make sure that their rights was respected in terms of them voting for the independence of Eritrea. So mobilization-wise, the process itself-wise, the commission at that time did, I guess, a wonderful job of following up the process and making it happen.
So was there any role that Ethiopia played in the process?
Well, like I said earlier, I think the first step towards a referendum is the need to get permission or understanding from the host state, which in our case was Ethiopia. If Ethiopia was not to agree, then this would take us obviously on a different route. But yes, Ethiopia did play a role. We just how won the war after 30 years. And to be honest with you, I think the only option that existed at that time was to go with the dreams of the Eritrean people, which was to see an independent country, Eritrea.
What was the population of Eritrea inside Ethiopia at that moment?
Uh, that number, I'm sorry, I don't have the number, but I'll be more than happy to find out and get back to you.
I mean, just in the proximity, 1 million, 500,000, 2 million?
I couldn't tell you, but about 57,000 Eritreans did vote for referendum at that time
Inside Ethiopia.
inside Ethiopia.
Did you have any concerns Ethiopia could rig the referendum, both in Ethiopia and in Eritrea?
Well, that's a good question. But luckily, the numbers turned out the way I mean they turned out. But the possibility, I guess, it could have happened,
Right, but it didn't happen though.
but it didn't happen.
Because it appears like at that moment, Ethiopia was just like, well, they are gone, let them go, and let them conduct a referendum.
Yeah, I mean, 30 years war a long time, and the Eritrean people were determined to control their own destiny. So at that time is obviously even if we didn't have the blessing of the Ethiopian administration, then the next step would have been, to continue with the war and destruction, so on and so forth. So, like I said, the best option for both countries at that time was to proceed with the referendum and let the Eritrean people control their own destination.
I'd like to know the structure of the Eritrean struggle because we learned at the end of the day that there was a Eritrean People's Liberation Front, and there was also the Eritrean Liberation Front. It's like the two groups that ended up managing or running the struggle, and then the EPLF eventually took over from the Ethiopians, set up a provisional government for 30 years. How many factions or groups, political groups, armed groups did you have for this period of 30 years?
Well, the two major players, like you said, is the ELF and then the EPLF. And whether you were in ELF or EPLF, the mission was the same. The struggle was the same. Being able to go ahead and free your people. And such internal challenge and conflicts that takes place. It happens not only in Africa but elsewhere as well. But at the end of the day, like you said, the EPLF was victorious, and the mission was ultimately the same goal as ELF, which is to free Eritrea or the Eritrean people, and that finally took place in 1991. And now, looking back, I think as we continued to struggle for our independence, and there were some mistakes, and I personally feel one of the mistakes was there was no checks and balance. When mistakes were made in the field for the sake of fighting for independence and what have you, they were overlooked, and as a result of it, we are paying the price for right now. As you know, Isaias Afwerki led the guerrilla war, and since our referendum in 1993, or even when we won the war, 1991, he's still the headsman. And 32 years later, here we are. It really is. It's unfortunate, but it is a one-man audience. Unfortunately, in Eritrea, now we don't have constitution, we don't have election, we don't have free press, we don't have free movement. Under his leadership, we have fought with all our neighbors, so on and so forth. And I think this is contributed from the mistakes that were made in the field of not having, the checks and the balance.
Again, it is quite unfortunate. Many people don't know. Until I started talking to you, I didn't realize that the same leader who took Eritrea to independence is still the person in power. Isaiah's Aweki or something like that. He is still the same guy in power today as we speak. Now, what do you think would have been done better? Oh, let me frame this question this way. When the EPLF of Aweki took over, was there no kind of infighting as with the ELF and the EPLF? Was there a consensus that EPLF, you lead and form a provisional government, we will cooperate with you and we work together? Was this the case, or the EPLF was just too powerful for any other group?
Well, unfortunately, if there was such discussion or the need to go ahead and work in unity, I honestly think the struggle for our independence would have been shortened. As a result of it, many lives would have been shortened. But I think there was personal priorities ahead of the people's and the country's priority. And in the case of our current dictator, Isaias Afwerki, I honestly think that is the case. He's putting his own priority, his own personal needs in front of the needs of the people or the needs of the country. It's unfortunate, like I said, I mean, Eritrea doesn't even have one credential university, and this is done by design. Anybody that's educated, anybody that's intellectual is a threat to his obviously power. And as a result of that, he went ahead and actually closed the one credential university that we had. Also, we don't have any parliament, and that's sad. So when decisions are made for the people, for the country, they're all made by one individual, which is Isaias Afwerki. And like I said earlier, there is no free press. All media entities in Eritrea are owned by the government. So what the people see, what the people hear is basically government propaganda. And then, of course, we don't have any constitution. It is
I
really
mean, up to
one
today,
big lie.
about 15 years after independence, you still don't have a constitution?
We have no constitution in Eritrea.
That is terrible. Well, but what happened to the Eritrean Liberation Force, ELF?
Well, obviously, when the ELF and EPLF fought in the field, and it was a loss for the Eritrean people, and the ELF was dissolved. Some obviously joined EPLF, and some decided to go ahead and leave the field, and ended up being refugees or ended up in the diaspora. But when everything was done and done, what the EPLF was doing was obviously to fulfill the wishes of the Eritrean people, and that did take place in 1993. But then again, a couple of years later, we took a wrong road, thanks to dictator Isaias Afwerki, and as a result of it, right now, we are paying the price. Some of the stuff that just that's unfortunate is, for example, in the state of Eritrea, statistics just came out by World Statistics. Only 1% of the Eritrean population uses the internet. And you and I know, Chris, the role that the internet plays in the 21st century. It's unfortunate.
Wow. So, when the Awake formed the provisional government, it gives a picture of a kind of a coalition. Who did he form the provisional government with? Did he incorporate other political leaders, or was just a name?
No, at the time, obviously, such institutions were built with his colleagues, fellow fighters, so on and so forth. But ultimately, as time went on, and when such fighters or his colleagues start asking for the implementation of the constitution, for the need to go ahead and implement parliament, so on and so forth, and that's when he start obviously start jetting them. So I'm not sure if you know this, but we have a G15, a group of 15 high-ranking Eritrean leaders that wrote him a letter stating that let's implement the constitution, let's hear the people, let's go ahead and implement free press, so on and so forth. And of course, he was against that, so he went ahead and took the decision to go ahead and put him in jail.
Wow. I would like to know one thing. During the 30 years struggle, we on our side have heard so much about the discipline of Eritreans in the diaspora in supporting the war. We have learned that there were levies, monthly levies that every Eritrean in the diaspora, I guess especially in Western Europe and the USA, had to take up, paying on the monthly basis. Is this true?
No, I can't emphasize enough the role that the diaspora played for our struggle. I mean, there were individuals that were pursuing their higher education at higher institutions, and they literally left their school to go ahead and obviously fight in the field. In addition to that, the Eritrean community in diaspora was extremely mobilized. So financially, we were able to go ahead and obviously fund the needs of our struggle. In addition to that, obviously, we had refugees as a result of the war, and that segment or that aspect of life needed to be taken care of as well. And in order to do that, you need to be mobilized, you need to have resources, and the Eritrean diaspora was able to go ahead and mobilize and reach out to the international community, and then of course just expose what the Ethiopians were doing to civilians and to innocent people in Eritrea. So the diaspora played a huge role. But then again, when everything is done and done inside Eritrea, the people are the owner of obviously their destiny. So the role or the price that they played is significant. So all Eritreans inside Eritrea and diaspora, we literally came as one unit and we were able to go ahead and establish our goal of becoming an independent country of Eritrea.
I would like you to distinguish between the role played by Eritreans inside Eritrea and those played by Eritreans out of Eritrea, that is in the diaspora. Was it both financial, or what form did it take?
Not only financial from the diaspora, but even the expertise. For example, somebody that is well educated obviously would be better off for him to go ahead and serve in diaspora, whether it's reaching out to the UN or State Department or EU, basically to the international community about our cause. So there were a lot of Eritreans that put their personal needs aside to go ahead and meet the needs of their country and their people. And then, of course, the Eritreans inside the country, it is, like I said, every family paid a price. So you could tell, or you could say that the Eritrean population was well mobilized, and we were all in one unit working like a well-oiled machine.
When you say at home, every family, everybody paid a price. In our case, we are saying that at home, people are already paying a price with the economic stagnation, and they're suffering from education is no longer functioning the way it used to function. Then you have fighters who are in the bushes defending the very people who have been deprived, marginalized. Some are arrested, locked up, tortured, many others killed. It sounds like a lot of suffering already for the people on the ground. For us, we are saying if you are in the diaspora, it is your exclusive responsibility to finance the struggle. Finance the struggle. I don't know whether this is the kind of structure that you had in your own case.
Yeah, whether it's from southern Cameroon or to Eritrea or elsewhere, we are the owner of our destiny. We are the owner of our cause, and every one of us is going to have to contribute in order to go ahead and meet our objectives or our missions. The Eritrean people were determined. Like I said, I think every family was affected by this war, and they paid heavy price at that time. Like I said, we were 3.5 million people versus in Ethiopia, if I'm not mistaken, around that time was about 52, 56 million. So we were fighting a huge guerrilla. In addition to that, the Ethiopians had a support from obviously Russia and the US and world powers. So we were to left to defend ourselves. And like I said, every family, every village, every person was determined to contribute so we could go ahead and fulfill our objective of becoming an independent country.
It's interesting that you talked about Eritrea getting support from Russia and other world powers. For how long in the course of the war did it take for Eritrea to start getting this kind of international support?
Well, and like I said earlier, it's unfortunate. World powers, they have their own interests. And in any cases, I mean, they're not going to compromise their interest to go ahead and feel your own interest. So not only were we fighting Ethiopia, but we were also fighting the world interest because in their best interest was to keep Eritrea with Ethiopia. So whether it's Cuba or Russia, continuously they were supplying the Ethiopian region at that time with every world-class weapon that you could think of. And then, of course, many other fighters, the Eritrean fighters had to literally depend in getting the weapons or the equipment from the enemy and defend themselves. And so, result of it, when you have people that are more mobilized, When you have people that are determined, they're going to meet their objectives, and that's exactly what the Eritrean fighters or the Eritrean people did.
That's interesting. Let's get back to the peace process that led to a referendum. You had negotiations finalizing in Algiers, Algeria, and then up to 2000, where we can say everything was over. Between 1962, and 1993, how long? I mean, not between 1962, but when you began, let me say between 1991, I guess, when you declared independence, and 1993, when the referendum actually took place. How long did the peace process go on between Eritrea and Ethiopia?
No, the 2 years period, obviously working for our independence, the voice of our people had to be obviously heard, and it took 2 years to go through that process through the commission of a referendum. And once that took place in 1993, a couple of years followed by dictator Isaias Afwerki working overtime to hold on to a grip to his power, and it's unfortunate. That's when everything kind of took a downturn. Seems like he was working for his own personal gains instead of the gains of the Eritrean people. But like I said, since we fought 30 years with Ethiopia, and since we had won that war, we had leverage there. I mean, the other option was to continue with the war, but then again, I mean, if you lost the war, you lost the war. They didn't want to go on that chapter, and they gave the concession. And through the UN observers, we were able to go ahead and go through the referendum.
Interesting. One thing we have also learned with your case is that those in the diaspora who did not financially support the struggle was somehow tasked when they returned home. Was that true?
Repeat that question for me. I'm sorry.
That one thing we are learning is that Eritreans in the diaspora who did not financially support the struggle in Eritrea were tasked the moment they set foot on the ground back in Eritrea after the war. Is that a statement of fact?
Oh, not that I'm aware of. To be honest with you, first and foremost, I think the Eritrean diaspora. I mean, I can't say never is never, but nevertheless, I think every Eritrean played their role in terms of financially or using their knowledge, their experience, so on and so forth. So when we gained our independence, every Eritrean was welcome to come to Eritrea and start fresh and play their role in terms of developing the country and human resources, so on and so forth. So everything was welcoming. And then, like I said, dictator Isaias Afwerki just took, unfortunately, a wrong turn, and he started working for his own personal gain instead of the gain of the people.
I'd like to read you a statement here that was made by a former U.S. Diplomat referring to the Eritrean referendum, and this is what he said. Again, this is coming from Ambassador Cohen. He said, oh, where is it now? He said, as expressed by the then U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Herman Cohen, and increasingly realized globally. He said, and I quote, if Eritreans want to exercise the right of self-determination, there is nobody, he said, who is going to stop them. He was saying this on the eve of the referendum. You know, this question of referendum, especially in our case, has been played to and fro as per whether Ambazonians should demand a referendum considering their own history. But when I look at your history and our history, very similar, very close. Eritrea was annexed by Ethiopia. First, it was a federal form of state. Ethiopia said, well, they are part of us. We should just annex them and keep them and own them as a province, which is exactly the same thing that happened between Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons. They annexed Eritrea. Eritrea rises up and say, we don't want this arrangement. We are not a province in Ethiopia. We are a nation. The same thing Ambazonians are saying to Cameroon and the international community. We are not a province. We have never been a province. It was forced upon us as Eritrea was annexed by Ethiopia. We wanted that. If you look at it in this picture, do you see any reason? I mean, this is your opinion. You are not an official here, but do you see any reason why Ambazonians do not have the legitimate right to say, well, if you say we are Cameroonians, we deserve the right to a referendum. So you know we are not, or whether we are. In your opinion, sir?
Well, at that time, the Ethiopian administration continuously emphasized that we don't need the Eritrean people. We need the Eritrean land and the Eritrean resources. Obviously, that was the stand of the Ethiopians, and that is the reason why obviously we picked up our armed struggle. As the saying goes by the great Martin Luther King, and his quote, let me see if I can find it, says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So ultimately, if there is injustice, it's just a matter of time. People are going to fight for their rights. People are going to fight for their own self-determination, so on and so forth. So with regard to Cameroon or Southern Cameroon, by any means, I'm not an expert. But in the case of the Eritrean, the case that we were fighting was, I mean, literally, we were told, we don't need you as people, but we need your land and your resources, and we have to pick up an arm, fight for our life, fight for justice, fight for our people, and with determination, obviously, and with the goal in mind, we were able to go ahead and fulfill that.
I'd like to know the role that the Ethiopian government played in authorizing, let me use the word authorizing the referendum to take place. Did they first resist it, or they just say, okay, if they want it, so be it?
Well, you had the Ethiopian government also inside Ethiopia. There was a group of people called TPLF. TPLF along with the EPLF fought together to go ahead and throw the dirt regime. So in our case, in a way, it was unique because the group obviously that was armed and that was struggling in Ethiopia was also a group that was working as hands and gloves with the ALF. Uh, our case is a little unique. So considering that, I mean the options was obviously wide open, and the TPLF knew that what exactly the Eritrean people desire or wanted, and for the sake of the Eritrean people and the Ethiopian people, the right thing to do was to go ahead and continue with the self-determination for Eritreans.
So it's essentially it was already a defeated case, and for Ethiopia, they didn't see the need to really say, no, we are not going to sign on to a referendum. We are not going to resist it. Let them do what they want.
Yeah, in that case, like I said, EPLF and then the TPLF, they were working together to throw the regime. and the Eritreans. Obviously, we won our independence, and the TPLF. Obviously, they have their own mission, their own agenda. They are Ethiopian, that's Ethiopian code, so on and so forth. But they were working together to go ahead and throw the regime that was in place in Ethiopia, and that's the reason why I keep on saying, in our case, it was a little unique. It wasn't just Eritreans fighting Ethiopian, but you have an Ethiopian group also that was fighting the region that was in power at that time.
You talked about getting support from the Russians and other world powers. If I may ask, what is the relationship between Eritrea and the Russians today? Are they still the ones keeping the dictator there in power?
Well, at that time, the Russians were supporting the Ethiopians, and unfortunately now the table has flipped. Dictator Isaias Afwerki has decided to go ahead and just cruise it with Russia and with China. And unfortunately, it's not in the best interest of the people of Eritrea or the country of Eritrea, but it is in the best interest of our dictator Isaias Afwerki and his regime. I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, as you know, the United Nations had a resolution regarding the Russia occupation of Ukraine. Seems like every country on the planet Earth actually agreed to the proposal, with the exception of six countries that kind of authorized Russia was doing the right thing, and unfortunately, Eritrea was one of them. And like I said, this is not in the best interest of Eritrea. This is a blackmail, a black image upon the Eritrean people and upon the country of Eritrea. But unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with the dictator.
When Eritreans went to the table to negotiate with Ethiopia, what were they looking to get, and what was Ethiopia looking to maintain or to keep? Considering, for example, look at the national debt, for example, the educational system, the taxation, and I mean electricity, all of the what were they trying to get to maintain? The Ethiopians and the Eritreans, what were they trying to get in the negotiations?
When you say negotiation, are you talking about during the
The,
referendum,
the
leading to
peace
the
the
referendum?
peace agreement that ended the war formally.
Oh, okay, the 98, 2000?
98. Yeah, yeah, 98 led to 2000, isn't it?
Okay, well, there was, yeah, that war in 98 and 2000 over a
Right, the
land
peace agreement
called
in Algiers.
in Algiers. That was the 98 and the 2000 war. And it's another unfortunate, like I stated earlier, the dictator in Eritrea has fought with every country in our neighbor. And as far as I know, Eritrea is the only country on planet Earth that has fought with every neighbor, whether it's Yemen or Sudan or Ethiopia or Djibouti, so on and so forth. Anyhow, that took place from 98 to 2000, and many lives were lost on both sides. But like any war, we know that how wars end. Ultimately, you gotta sit down around the round table and work out your differences. So, like I said, that war of 2 years took a lot of lives, and the Alger Agreement is regarding the debt, regarding the border, who belongs, what belongs to what, so on and so forth. So there is a deliberation on that, but unfortunately, that has not been implemented, and for generations to come, it needs to be implemented. That's what I believe, and that's what my opinion, and that is the final decision of the commission.
After the First World War up to 1962, did Eritrea have its own boundaries separate from Ethiopia?
Well, from the Italian colonizations to the British, so on and so forth, and then ultimately the United Nations, obviously not letting us make our own determination, putting us back to Ethiopia. As you know, the borders of the colonizers, I mean, they obviously the borders are meant to meet their needs. And then, of course, there were villages and people that were divided accordingly, unfortunately. But the border was never democratic. But like I said, the 98 to 2000, the commission, the Alger agreement, knows exactly where the border lies, which one is Ethiopia, which one is Eritrea, so on and so forth. But to this day, it's not democratic. But unfortunately, Isaias Afwerki, he said, I mean, the reason why the war started in the first place is because of Badme. And then that Badme itself was rewarded to Eritrea. And now he's telling us that actually the reason why the border war started is not necessarily Badme, but there were, the world powers that kind of ignited such wars. So every internal challenge or issue that he runs into, he tries to externalize it as much as he can, and that's why we are saying a dictator is a dictator.
Well, I would like you to tell us a little bit about your organization, the Global Yike Eritrean Movement. I understand you said it's a human rights movement. You do advocacy, justice, democracy. For how long have you been running this organization, and what does it hope to achieve for Eritreans? A democratically elected government?
No, no, absolutely. That's a goal. Globally, actually, Eritrean movement is global is global. Eritrean is Eritrean movement is movement. But Yaakal in our natively language means enough, enough to injustice, enough to oppressing our people, enough to obviously our people siding for in other countries. And Eritrea, like I said, with 3.5 million population, is one of the highest refugee producers worldwide. And we saying enough to this. We want opportunities, and globally, Eritrean movement is a socio-political movement, and we are fighting or advocating for the rights of our citizens, for justice, for democracy, and then, of course, the rule of law in Eritrea.
All right, I will please allow you to stay put in there. I am going to open the phone lines and get some people who may have some few questions. Let's see, we can take about five or so questions from our listeners out there from Africa and in the diaspora. Please do not touch your remote. I will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thought before I should I would leave, I should open the phone lines for a few of you who may want to ask a few questions from him. We will now open the phone line, but remember, before you call, turn down the volume of your set. Before you call, turn down the volume of your set before you call. And when you call, you have 1 minute to make your point or ask your question. Let me get to the first caller here. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Comrade Chris, this is Didi calling from the Scandinavians.
Okay, Didi, what is in your mind, sir?
Thank you very much for the exciting program and thank the guests, our Eritrean brother Awet. Awet has just touched something in the very last minute before you started the question and answer session. Awet said that one of the disadvantages of the negotiated settlement is that resolution from a negotiated settlement might never be implemented. So we need to know that, we Ambazonians need to know that. So a negotiated settlement, you might end up having resolutions that are never implemented, unlike a referendum vote where the outcome is automatically recognized and endorsed by the international community. So that's something I learned from his interview. That the resolution that we're taking in the Algiers today, some of them have not been implemented. So we Ambazonians need to take note of that, because a lot of Ambazonians are always calling for negotiation, but forgetting that the outcome of the negotiation is very important only when it's implemented.
Correct.
If it's not implemented, it is no use.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's get to the next caller here. Hello. Hello. Okay, that's a bad connection. The line is open. Go ahead and call. The line is open. I think I think that point, I didn't quite get it. Thank God for the caller here. It's interesting that the resolutions of a peace agreement are not implemented. In which case, if you had sat there waiting for the terms of the peace agreement to be implemented, you probably will not be recognized today as a nation, if not for the referendum.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's unfortunate. I think you got groups and politicians that are working based on self-righteous and so on and so forth. But the Alger agreement is done and final and needs to be implemented. That is there. Now, obviously, it will take time to discuss such subject matter. We couldn't possibly get it to all of it in a few minutes. But if it is final, it is final, and it needs to be democratic, no doubt.
All right, let's get back to the phones. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, where are you calling from, sir?
I'm calling from Kumba.
Okay, and what is on your mind?
Yeah, I read about the explanation. I have this to ask. When the referendum comes and to be organized by whichever body, our registration here on the ground, our registration here on the ground, these Bamleki people we are here with, where would they whoever who is resisting, where are they going to keep these people? Because they will normally come. That's my question.
I think we have made it very clear that in the case of a referendum, only Ambazonians,
Yes.
Southern Cameroonians are allowed to register and vote, not Francophones, not Bamlekis.
Yeah, we quite understand. Where would they keep these people who are born here? Where would they keep them? Because they will never come to this. Where would they keep? Where are they going to keep them? I mean,
I get your question. I guess the answer is when the modalities are put forth by the international community that is assuming we will have one. When they put down the modalities, that will be taken care of.
Yes.
Isn't that aware? The international community Who came up with the modalities in the case of your referendum? Was it the Eritrean people, the Eritrean provisional government, or the international community? Thank you for the call.
Yeah. No, like I stated earlier, I think we are the owner of our destiny. We are the owner of our cause. So our people are the owner of that cause itself.
Okay, so your people call for it, you call for the referendum, and you made the modalities.
Not only that, but we, like I stated earlier, we paid 65,000 lives for that to happen or to take place.
Right. Okay, the phone lines are open. Gentlemen, go ahead and call. I will take possibly 2 or 3 more calls before I let Awed to go. So go ahead and call. The phone line is turned on. All right, if there is no caller coming, no, okay, I see somebody calling back here. Hello.
Yes, Comrade Chris.
Yes, sir.
I'm still coming back to add my voice to what Awed said. Remember, when the struggle just started, we had a town hall meeting where a rebel leader from Colombia spoke to us, a lady.
Correct.
She said exactly the same what Awed was saying, that they had a negotiation settlement in Cuba.
Correct.
And he was running on. Never believe on negotiations. He said negotiations are paper exercise. That they were fooled in Cuba, they went through negotiation and they deceived their rebels, they dropped their guns. The moment they dropped their guns, see today, Colombia has never implemented any of the resolution. And everything, they lost everything for 20 years of fighting. So
Right.
you see that Ethiopia only succeeded, Eritrea only succeeded because they had already jumped into the referendum and get their country recognized. Because if their country were not recognized to a referendum, Ethiopia could have recaptured them again. They have nothing to do.
Or reneged from the peace agreement. Even
Exactly.
is that not the case, Awed? Ethiopia would have said, you know what? We're going back to fight. We'll take back our territory.
Exactly. And the international community is gone. They are gone. You cannot call them back. They are gone. So the smartest thing that Eritrea did was that they jumped to a referendum, put their country in their pocket, and zip it before start fighting for whatever resolution will come from the negotiation. Because they warned us in Colombia that never you go for a negotiation settlement and drop a gun because the occupier will always come back and recapture you. Because those things are paperwork. That's what they want to say. That it's a paper exercise. Thank you very much. Just for our listeners to understand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Awed, you got anything to add there?
No, and I know I keep on repeating this, but in the case of Eritrea was unique. Like I said, we struggled for 30 years and we had won the war. So in terms of obviously going for our determination to become an independent country, I think the Ethiopians knew all along that's what we were striving for. And they were not to go. I would hate to play the if game, but they were not to go along with that. Then the bloodish would continue, and the result of the war or the outcome was obviously visible to everybody that Eritrea had won it. So I'm not so sure the Ethiopians had any option but to go along and fulfilling the needs of the Eritrean people, which is an independent country, Eritrea.
Right. All right. I am very pleased to have had you here. Take a few questions from us and give us some illumination. Before you go, I think let me get quickly this caller here before you go. Hello.
Yes, hey, Comrade Chris, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, Chris. Hey, I want to say, great, our brother, our comrade here, Aweti, we want to thank him and for coming on to the show today to speak to our people, to help educate our people. we also want to, really appreciate our brothers and sisters in Eritrea for their successes, which we are learning from. So we really want to appreciate them. So the question that I have for our comrade, our brother here is, and this might be a touchy question, but it's something I think that we will be able to benefit from. We understand that Eritrea is unfortunately in a dictatorship right now, right? The current president that has been there, he's been there since 1993. What are some of the lessons that from your own personal opinion, what are some of the lessons that you have learned that you wish you would have been able to implement that could have helped avoid this situation? So that, and what would you recommend to us so that maybe we will try to implement it as we establish our political system? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure where you got that question.
Yes, I did. And who was the caller? I didn't get the name. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Well, the caller's name?
The caller's name is Ngwambe.
Wambe. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for calling, Wambe, and thank you for the question. I think one of the things that we continue to look back and on the Eritrean struggle, what could have been done to avoid the current challenges, and I mentioned it earlier. We gotta be able to go ahead and think ahead, meaning that during our struggle on the field, like I said, there were mistakes being made. Those mistakes were overlooked because the mission or the objective was independent Eritrea. For the sake of independent Eritrea, whatever challenge, whatever problem there was, it was hush hush. So that decision is making us pay the price right now. So whatever decision is going to take place from now going forward, that decision needs to be made now. It needs to be corrected now. If you have politicians, if you have diplomats, if you have fighters that are serving their people, they should be serving their people as it is right now, as they are going to go ahead and serve them after independence and what have you. So like I said, in the Eritrean case, I think the mistake that was made was not being able to go ahead and correct the challenge while we were fighting for our independence. And I think giving a power to one individual or one group without accountability is dangerous. And we see it in Eritrea. That's exactly what's happening to us. Now, we fought for our independence.
That is a very profound statement. Giving power to one group, one individual, very dangerous. That is interesting because it is something we ourselves grapple with in this struggle, and which is why when we set up the interim government that we have here, we have what we call the Restoration Council. The Restoration Council oversees the work of the executive. In other words, the executive cannot just say, hey, we're going to hang in there till heaven comes. The Restoration Council will say, no, you cannot do that. In fact, you will be impeached, and they have actually carried out quite a number of impeachment. But then the question becomes, where you do not have any abilities to enforce your own rules, what do you do? Because I guess when you were fighting, there was no legitimate authority. Everybody was authority, isn't it?
Absolutely. That that check and balance. I mean, we did a great job, obviously, fighting the external forces. But then again, we have our own homegrown dictator, and it's unfortunate. So once again, I think if those challenges were met heads on early on during our struggle, I don't think we would have found ourselves in the position that we are in right now.
All right. Hello. Hello. Hello.
I'm sorry to come back. It's so interesting. I'm sorry to come back.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah, the question Dr. Ngwambe has asked is Very legitimate question, and the answer that our guest has given is very spot on. Let me expatiate. I happen to have an Eritrean friend whose son is in the same football club with my son. So we were trying to analyze the two revolutions or the two struggles. And then he also made mention, like I was, about the dictator that they have in the country now. Then he told me the problem, the difference between their struggle and our own is that they were only fighting and fighting. Nobody was thinking, what after the war? Nobody was thinking that. Because I told him we have an interim government, we have a TV station, we have counties, we have LGA. He said, wow, we have a flag, we have an anthem. He said, you are done. That did never have these things. They were just fighting. Then when the independence came, it was like, everybody was like, whoa, people were like, on the spot. So he said, perfect them when we're on the ground. That if they had gotten this idea that we have now, they will not find themselves this dictator they're having today. They were just fighting. Nobody was asking the question. After independence, what next? Nobody was asking that question. So what I was saying is spot on. Spot on.
Well, I think he's essentially saying, thank you. Let's get to this caller from Ground Zero first. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Where are you calling from, please? I think that must be a bad network connection there. All right. So I think I would, if I'm putting words in your mouth, let me know. Please, you are essentially saying if you had known better, you probably wouldn't have grown a dictator that you have today. But you got there because during the fight, there were no checks and balances. Everybody was just fighting until the guy who took over, who overthrew the Ethiopian leadership in Eritrea, took over and became a tiger, became a nightmare to the same people he had fought for, wasn't it?
And unfortunately, yeah, that's exactly what we are enduring or we are facing. And like he said, if there were checks and balance early on as we were fighting for our struggle, I repeat, I don't think we would have been we would be in the position that we are in right now.
All right. Hello. Hello.
Hello, sir. Yeah, hello.
Hello. Where are you calling from, please?
I'm calling from Kumba.
Okay. And what is on your mind?
Yeah, what I want to ask is, now that this war is being fought on our own ground, and if there want to be something like a referendum which we are discussing now, it will be on our own ground, quite all right?
Correct.
When there's a ceasefire like what we are talking now, this ceasefire, where are these people going to keep all these military camps that are built around this?
Well, again, as I said before in the previous question, when the moment comes, the international community will work out the modalities with us. We don't want to start bending from here while the door is still quite ahead there.
Yeah, because you yourself see that the war is only on our ground.
Right. No, the referendum will be decided on our ground if we have one. All right, thank you for the call.
So that's why I want to know, because we cannot hold any talks or any even referendum with these people and their guns still and their military camps still being here.
Yeah, no, that definitely cannot happen. Thank you for the call.
Okay.
All right, I am so glad you showed up to be my very special guest for this show. That has been a lot of education and inspiration from you, and I hope that our people out there have learned something today from your experience. Thank you for coming, sir.
Yeah, very welcome. I enjoyed our stay, Chris. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. You have a great day.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to take a brief break out, and when I come back, I will tell you what happened yesterday in Ngolketunjia and what is going on in Mbengwi, and we will call it a day. Stay put, do not touch your remote. Ladies and gentlemen, something is going on in Mbengwi. The faces of the people you find on your screen there, those are the faces of the mayor of Mbengwi, and the divisional officer, the colonial divisional officer for the same community. Now, before 20th May, they went to war. These two guys went to war with Mbengwi population. They started from the main market in Mbengwi, shutting it down to every trader who obeyed lockdown in ghost towns. A few days ago, they promised to reopen the shops. They asked the other shopkeepers or shop owners to go first, open their shops, got them unsealed, and then they will follow suit to unseal the shops that they officially sealed. The owners of the shops which were unsealed went back, and the colonial official was expecting them to make sure that their shops remain open today, being Ghost Town Monday. They made sure they wanted to see whether they opened their shops today, being Ghost Town Monday. The traders, when they did not open their shops, they refused to disobey Ghost Town. And today in Mbengwi, this is how the market in Mbengwi look like today. Take a look. Again, this is the market in Mbengwi today. According to information coming to us from Mbengwi today, the gate is wide open or was wide open. The market gate, as you can see, was wide open. No trader showed up. No shopper showed up. Again, no trader showed up, and no shopper showed up either. It was ghost town. It was ghost town, and the people choose to respect it than allow it to be desecrated by a colonial official in their municipality. Now, we want to appreciate what the people of Mbengwi, the brave and courageous people, especially those traders in Mbengwi, are doing. We also learned that banks were sealed. The colonial officials sealed banks, community banks in Mbengwi. We want to appeal to every shop owner in Mbangwe, especially within the confines of this market. If other shops which were sealed are not unsealed, we ask you to get into solidarity with every other shop owner whose shop has been sealed in that municipality. Because if you do not fraternize with them, tomorrow it may be your own shop that is shut is down. Again, if you do not fraternize with your colleagues, tomorrow it may be your own shop that is shut down. So we are asking every shop owner in Mbangwe, please remain shut down until this colonial officer alone, he has been telling people of what he did in Nkambe. We are hearing all of it, but I am telling him, there was one guy in Boya called Ekema Patrick, who was trying to do the same thing that he is trying to do in Mbangwe. Maybe he should be asked, where is Ekema Patrick today? Now you in Mbangwe have heard of the arrest of their local politicians there in Mbangwe, and today they are nowhere to be found. I hope these two listen to the sound of my voice and know that we are hearing what they are doing in Mbangwe, the pain they are inflicting upon the people in Mbangwe. We are monitoring it, and I can assure the people in Mbangwe that anything we are able to do, we will not hesitate to do it. Anything we can do to this tool, we will not hesitate to do it. We will not hesitate to do it. So, I hope that the people in Mbangwe hear me. Please, again, if you are a trader and your shop wasn't shut down, please be in solidarity with every other shop owner in Mbangwe whose shop was shut down. It is very important. And again, that is the picture coming from Mbangwe today. Everybody respecting lockdown respected in Mbangwe, in spite of the fact that the colonial official there went after our traders in Mbangwe. Now I take you to another development that took place yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'd like you to take a look at this image. You are looking at what happened in the Ngol Ketinja yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. These are men of the Cameroon military who were ambushed yesterday, Sunday morning around 6 a.m., we are told, by the restoration fighters. A statement coming from the La République du Cameroon intelligence says, again, this happened at 6 a.m. Yesterday on their 51st detachment based in Menfong, a district of Galim. It says a patrol composed of 6 men, the code attachment, chief warrant officer, and Corporal Moto, and Cap Yamene, the driver, Corporal Osui, First Class Bahombe, Class Zambo. So they were heading towards Bambalang in Ngol Ketinja. They arrived at Bafanji village, and their own statement says they were ambushed. They were ambushed by Ambazonians using their cannon, or using our cannon called Amoka, and personal weapons, according to the report. Again, that happened yesterday in Ngol Ketinja. I hope that the Republic of Cameroon can see this and realize that the war is not won yet. It is not going to be won. It is not going to be won. I think that after 20th May, ladies and gentlemen, it should have dawned on the officials in the Republic of Cameroon. This rush to victory that they have been trying to get everybody to believe. They are decimating the Ambazonia fighters. They have killed almost all of them. I think by now, after 20th May, or beginning from 20th May, even before 20th May, I think they should be getting the message. This war is far from over. It is not getting over to Ambazonia. It's a country, an independent country like Eritrea. That is just what our resolve is. That is just what our resolve is. And many of these images will continue to come up on a weekly basis until Cameroon sees the need to talk peace and justice. That's the only thing we are waiting for, to call it off. Again, these are Cameroon soldiers, ladies and gentlemen. That's the Cameroon army. From the attack, the ambush of yesterday. So, we hope they are learning their lessons. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to call it a night here. It's a holiday. I did not intend to be long here tonight. I hope to be back here perhaps on Wednesday with another broadcast. I don't know what happened with our Facebook page. I realized that the Facebook broadcast was shut down. It was shut down when we just started. It got shut down and the numbers never came back to what it was supposed to be. Unfortunately, I think we are considering developing our own something that looks like a Facebook page. If we can actually be able to do a transmission from there, we will work on developing our own Facebook page in the days ahead. We have tried a lot of things to rectify this Facebook issue, but nothing seems to be working. We've created different Facebook pages, tried to migrate to those pages, but they just don't work as expected. Either we are shut down or we are limited to who can watch and the notifications do not go out. Somebody is just trying to make sure that this broadcast does not get out. But thank God for television on Ground Zero in all of Africa and Roku. And Roku, if you live in the diaspora and you miss this broadcast from the beginning, if you were watching on Facebook and you miss it on Facebook when it was shut down, you can always go back to Roku. It will be there live. The moment I am off this screen, it will be running there live again. So, but we will do something to fix this, make sure that everything works. Thank you for staying put, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to being back here, I guess, on Wednesday. God bless you all. Happy Memorial Day if you are in the USA. Good night.